Hey everyone! Today we're going to be looking at a very common and very understandable idea that most ADC players have, that they don't really dictate their lane and that it's more on the supports. And yeah, that's not wrong in most ways. Supports have a lot more agency in how a matchup plays out in many facets. Also, the support pick is very often what dictates how the bot lane matchup will go, as ADC picks are far more homogeneous. You have a huge range of playstyles and strengths among supports, while a lot of ADCs generally do similar things. More similar than supports, at least. And this is why a lot of ADC players feel like the lane is out of their control. The supports do a lot more of the poking, engaging, etc. So after watching tons and tons of lower elo ADC players, we've realized that they're very often trying to control parts of the lane that they can't, while often completely ignoring the parts that they can. So everything feels completely out of hand. Today we'll be looking at examples of this from low elo, where ADCs from silver to platinum completely disregard the controllable factors of the lane and pay the price. Let's jump into it. To start, we join with this Plat 3 Ashe playing in this lane here. What do you think Ashe can control in this lane? What should she be trying to do? If you don't know, that's totally fine, but just try to think. Okay, before we answer this, let's call back onto an image that a lot of you may have seen in the past, the triangle of bot lane. For those of you who haven't seen this before, the idea is that there are three core types of bot lanes: poke, all-in, and sustain. All-in beats sustain by just not giving them the time to heal by just battling. Sustain beats poke because they can just heal up the poke. And poke beats all-in because they can chunk the enemy bot lane out and get them too low to engage. Now, obviously this is a very simplistic, generalized view of the bot lane, but there is value in it. As we mentioned before, it's largely the supports that dictate which type of lane you have, but ADCs can be a piece of this as well, of course. So, what do you think? What do we have here in this matchup? Well, the first thing that we should all definitely notice is that Leona is a super one-dimensional all-in support. Ashe is more of a poke and push champ pre-6, but becomes an all-in champ after 6, and due to how one-dimensional Leona is, that's definitely going to be their win condition. Meanwhile, the enemy bot lane is also a bit of an all-in lane. Morgana wants to look for bindings that Tristana can jump in on, and they have a strong level 6 all-in. Morg can also function as a poke and push champion, but Tristana wants to go in so she can adapt to that style. So with this all-in versus all-in lane, it's going to come down to who executes better. But Ashe heavily outtrades and outranges Tristana, so they have that advantage as well. It'll be Ashe's job to ensure that she's aware of and enabling their win condition. By the way, if you're enjoying the video, a sub to the channel would be incredible. So let's see what happens as the lane starts with Ashe not having to leash while the opposing lane does. How's Ashe doing so far? What do you think? So believe it or not, Ashe has already made a really significant mistake that goes against their game plan for this lane. Do you think she should have A, tried to cheese in the tri-rush, B, not autoed the wave at all to avoid pushing, or C, not autoed as much as she did to push more slowly? If you said C, that's mostly right. It's the most right answer that we gave you anyway. Another option would have been for him to just be in lane and pull the wave to secure the push. For anyone that isn't familiar with this, by tanking the minions for a bit then walking into the brush to de-aggro, you get the wave to focus on one minion, burning it down and creating a 6-5 minion lead quickly, which causes the wave to push. Beyond that, because that first minion dies so quickly, if the enemy bot lane leashes for too long, they'll miss XP, which is obviously a huge advantage. Okay, but jumping back to the lane, why was Ashe spamming autos and pushing quickly a problem? Think about what they want to do in this lane as we watch for a bit. So the issue is that because she pushed so quickly, this caused the waves to meet here, way too close to the enemy tower. This means that Leona is literally useless, and as we can see, they aren't able to do anything with their level 2 advantage. Leona cannot engage onto these champions who are already under tower. So within the first few seconds of this lane phase, our Platinum ADC messed up one of the few things in her control, the wave, which in turn messed up her support's ability to play the game. Now beyond that, what other damage has Ashe done to her lane by pushing this aggressively? What can she no longer do? If you said a cheater recall, that's absolutely right. The cheater recall, which is something that we talk about a lot, relies on very quickly pushing the third wave, assisted by a built-up wave of your own to help you push and keep you safe, making it so the enemy cannot engage on or trade with you effectively enough to stop you. I mean, just look at this. Morg can easily maneuver around these minions to try and land a binding. So again, Ashe had things that she could control in this lane that would have given her advantages and her lane chances to succeed, and she simply failed to execute them. Alright, moving on to our next game for the day, we join with another Ashe, this time in High Silver. Once again, let's look at these matchups here and talk about what types of lanes we have and what our goals should be early on. Take some time to think. Alright, so both lanes are essentially push and poke lanes that want to win through having prio, tempo resets, forcing bad bases through poke, etc. This is going to make this, in low elo where no one is playing optimally, just a pure skill matchup. Whoever plays their lane's win condition will succeed. So Ashe should really be trying to get the push early, see if she can get anything from level 2 advantage, then try to cheater recall from there with a built up wave, come back and dominate from there with her poke. Let's see what happens. Hopping into it right away, we see a bit of a potential issue, right? Our Ashe is being forced to leash while the enemy bot lane is not. Surely we are just doomed and cannot possibly get the push. This is a mentality that we want to make sure none of our viewers have. You hear this a lot in high elo, watching challenger streams, etc. That if you leash and they don't, you lost the push. However, this is literally almost never the case in low elo where players do not prioritize pushing the wave at all, especially the supports but ADCs as well. So never just give up on the push purely because you had to leash. Actually look at what's happening, try to contest, and only back off if it's truly lost. So let's watch what happens as Ashe arrives in lane and analyze the wave state. Okay, what do we think? How's Ashe doing here? Take a few seconds to think. So yeah, she's doing poorly. Ashe has already missed numerous auto attacks onto the wave and seems to have no interest at all in pushing for 2, despite the fact that it's very doable. The enemy bot lane was not pushing well, so even though they didn't leash, Ashe could have stolen the push. Ashe doubles down on this, moving outside of the wave to get an angle for poke onto Fiddle. And we can see why someone would think that this is the play. You're in a poke lane, why not poke? But of course, getting level 2 and therefore not having them get level 2 on you is far more important than landing one volley onto the enemy support. Even things like trading back onto Fiddle here a bit later are technically mistakes, though they feel so natural. Then Ashe just, runs around, giving up level 2, even committing to more poke as the minions are going down, and very likely could have died here if Caitlyn knew how to do damage. Either way, this lane is completely thrown here, and it was all because of things that were in Ashe's control, despite having to leash at the start. So once again, if Ashe had just prioritized the push, non-stop auto-attacking it because it was somewhat contested, so there was no danger of over-pushing it, then this entire situation could have been avoided. Before we get into the next game, you should know all about SkillCap's new Direct Pro coaching service, which our members have quickly fallen in love with and are constantly telling us how quickly it's helped them climb. Simply submit a request to a SkillCap approved challenger coach to receive a personalized video where they identify what's actually stopping you from climbing and how to fix it. These are highly detailed videos that are around 15 minutes in length, which you can keep safely in your SkillCap's profile to come back and rewatch them whenever you like. You can either pick a specific replay for us to look at, or let the challenger decide which game they think is best to analyze. No stress, hassle-free, submit a request and sit back and wait for your video to come, which on average takes less than 24 hours. Anyway, up next we have another Platinum player, this time on Jinx. As a quick side note, I don't know, I'm kind of excited to see Jinx maybe making a return. We saw her in the LEC playoffs this weekend, and I'm hoping we see more. Scaling champions are always a bit of a potential snooze, but she can just pop off so hard and make some crazy plays. Anyway, here's the matchup for this game. Once again, take some time to think about how you would try to execute, what these lanes want to do, etc. Okay, so in this lane, of course we have a Set, who once again is a pretty linear all-in support against Lucian and Janna, who are going to play as a poke lane. And this is one of those lanes where it can very easily feel like it's out of your control as the Jinx. You're just waiting for Set to find a good engage, and if he doesn't quickly, there's a good chance that he'll just get poked down, at which point you basically won't even have a support. But even then, we'll once again see that our Platinum Jinx has her chances to control their early lane phase and simply fails to execute. The lane starts with both sides having to leash, but the red side lane arrives a bit sooner. Now, the lane with the range support, Janna, should absolutely be able to push, but once again, pays zero attention to what should happen on these early pushes. It doesn't matter if you have to leash, if you have the melee support, etc. It's all irrelevant. Just contest the push and pay attention to what's happening to know if it's lost, at which point you obviously do need to back out. And yeah, neither support has any interest in influencing the push, with neither of them doing a point of damage to a minion, which is exactly what we're saying. Even in Plat this is the case. And this is what allows Jinx to get the push with her AoE rockets and some help from Set at the end, despite the fact that they should be getting zoned out and pushed on. And so far so good for Jinx. She's overall done a nice job, and they're able to take control and zone out the enemy bot while the next wave comes in. What would you do next if you were Jinx? Take some time to think. If you said to hard spam shove this wave then execute a super simple cheater recall, you're absolutely right. This is the perfect time and champion for it as Jinx, who can push so quickly. Let's see what happens. Jinx sits in minigun and barely auto attacks, allowing the wave to bounce back and be equalized again, in that super awkward spot where your engaged support can't play the game. Jinx has traded an actively winning, ideal situation for one that is losing in the span of just 15 seconds, and once again, it was entirely in her control. Another really cool thing about when you leash bot side and are still able to get the push and execute a cheater recall is that by the time you reset after that third wave, that's a very common time for your jungler to be resetting back to bottom as well. So when you get back to lane and freeze 1 to 2 waves, it becomes an amazing gank opportunity that can just snowball the game right there. But instead, we very predictably see our blue bot lane getting poked out, causing Set to panic under the pressure and force an engage that Jinx was not ready for, and they're sent back to base with their tails between their legs. This is a really nice example of that earlier matchup triangle that we discussed earlier, rearing its head as their poke provokes a desperate play. And this is all the more reason that Jinx should have seen this coming and looked to reset quickly. There's no reason to just sit in this lane passively, as you will always lose that over time, and they were in a spot where they couldn't possibly engage. So in all 3 of these lanes that we saw today, 2 from Platinum and 1 from Silver, the ADC had clear chances in the early lane phase to take control and build an advantage for themselves. Would this have won them the game? No, not right away, but they're leaving easy advantages on the table, which you just can't do when so many other things are out of your control in this role. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.